it sounds to me as if you just suggested a purge, a government-wide purge from the White House, directed by the White House, of any staffer who previously worked for the Obama administration. Is that what you're suggesting?
Anyone who's a political appointment is what I said, and I will use the word purge. I've used it over the last few days. I think that needs to happen. I think it's a descriptive word that fits well within the English language, and I know there are people that will attach extra meaning to that. I don't know a better word to use.
All righty then. Good morning and welcome to AM Joy. That was Iowa Congressman Steve King on MSNBC Live with my good friend Katie Tur, offering some free advice to Donald Trump. Plug the leaks in this especially leaky administration by conducting a government-wide purge of all political appointees who worked in the federal government while Barack Obama was president. Well, it seems that Trump was already one step ahead of his congressional supporter, because about a half hour after King said those words, the Attorney General, Jefferson Sessions, ordered the immediate resignation of all 46 U.S. attorneys remaining from the Obama era. That includes Preet Bharara. He's the Manhattan U.S. attorney who expected to remain in his post after Donald Trump asked him about staying back in November. The surprise firings follow a January purge at the State Department of its senior leadership and an abrupt reassignment of career civil servants at state last month. That paranoia that political appointees and career civil servants, people who worked in the federal government during the Obama era, and members of what Breitbart World calls the deep state, might be conspiring behind the scenes to undermine and sabotage the Trump administration, both through leaks and through something more sinister, illegal Nixon-style wiretapping, starts all the way at the very top. As we saw last Saturday with Donald Trump's weird, out-of-the-blue tweets claiming without any evidence whatsoever that he was secretly wiretapped at Trump Tower by President Obama. And yesterday, in that same interview that you just heard, King added his own bizarre twist to Trump's conspiracy theory with the claim that Trump was wiretapped not only before the election in Trump Tower in New York, but also during his presidency in the White House. Listen.
We believe that President Trump was wiretapped in his conversation, or wiretapped in his conversation with the President of Mexico, wiretapped again in his conversation with the Prime Minister of Australia, and we've got the fairly definitive stories about the FISA warrants being requested.
All righty then. Joining me now, our MSNBC political analyst Joel Benenson, Malcolm Nance, MSNBC contributor and author of The Plot to Hack America, Rosa Brooks, a Georgetown law professor and author of How Everything Became War and the Military Became Everything, and Jack Rice, former CIA officer and terrorism expert. Thank you all for being here. Joel, I'm going to start right here at the table with you. These conspiracy theories that President Obama was somehow ordering the ongoing hacking or wiretapping of Donald Trump, and I guess doing it from Hawaii or New York or wherever he is. He's apparently a ninja in addition to being the former president. What do you make of it? Is this Donald Trump misreading something that's really happening? That maybe there's really a FISA warrant on someone who lives in Trump Tower? Paul Manafort lives there. There are other sort of interesting figures in Trump Tower, and that he's just misexplaining it? Or do you think that he genuinely believes that somehow former President Obama is wiretapping him?
Well, I think there's a bigger dynamic, actually. I think the problem with Donald Trump is, as President of the United States, you have access to the best information in the world. You have access to more information than anyone in the world. And yet he seems to react to things he reads on Breitbart or somewhere else.
Right.
And what that does is it creates chaos. And I don't think it's always planned chaos. Yeah. But I think it undermines his credibility at a time when the most important thing for him to be doing as a president who got elected with a low approval rating, low trust ratings, is to be rebuilding credibility.
Yeah, and part of what he also seems to be doing, Jack Rice, is using what he and Hannity and Breitbart and all these conspiracy theorists call the deep state as a way to essentially undermine American trust in our own institutions, in the government. But he is in the government. I've never seen a White House try to work to destabilize American trust in the government. And his source of information, his sources, appear to be not only things like Breitbart.com, not only sort of crazy conspiracy theorists like Alex Jones, but the TV. He seems to be being spoken to through the TV and given suggestions and then executing them. Let you listen to Sean Hannity. This was his A block on Thursday night on his show on Fox News that sounds suspiciously like what then wound up happening on Friday. Take a listen.
For weeks, we've been warning you about the deep state, Obama holdover government bureaucrats who are hell-bent on destroying this president, President Trump. Tonight, it's time for the Trump administration to begin to purge these saboteurs before it's too late.
So, Jack, you have Sean Hannity telling him, purge the saboteurs. Then you have Steve King get on our air with Katie Tur and say, purge the saboteurs. And then Donald Trump's administration starts purging people they think are the saboteurs, I guess.
Yeah, I'm more concerned about a Russian mole than I am about the deep state. We need to really look at what's going on here. You look at the connections between the Russians and Paul Manafort, the connections between the Russians and Mike Flynn, the connections between Sessions, the connections between Kushner. The list goes on and on and on. And our problem, of course, is we have no idea about the connections between the president himself and the Russians because he won't release his taxes. I mean, if this is about an investigation and this is about transparency, and he wants to complain about the conspiracies around the world, fine. Then let's just open it up, lay it out, and figure it out. How about that? I know it's not shocking, but, well, there we are.
Well, I mean, but the thing is that there are investigations that are cooking on Capitol Hill, Rosa, but it does appear that at least a lot of Republicans are taking the bait that the Trump administration is putting out and saying, yeah, we'll investigate, but we're not going to investigate Donald Trump and his team's ties to the Russians. We're going to investigate this so-called deep state and these leaks. Let's listen to Devin Nunes actually making an excuse for why Donald Trump seems to not understand anything about government, including the fact that he's the president, and if there were wiretaps, he could just get transcripts of them. This is Devin Nunes, who should, in theory, be leading an investigation of Trump's ties to Russia. This is Devin Nunes.
Is that a proper thing for the president to do? He wasn't asking open questions. He made a declarative statement that the former president wiretapped him.
Well, as you all know, the president is a neophyte to politics. He's been doing this a little over a year. And I think a lot of the things that he says, you guys sometimes take literally. Sometimes he doesn't have 27 lawyers and staff looking at what he does.
But, Rosa, shouldn't he have 27 lawyers and staff looking at what he does?
He certainly should. I mean, there are a couple of ironies here. One is that this wiretapping allegation, either he's nuts and it's completely crazy, or he is somehow dimly aware of something going on in the Justice Department in which he or one of his cronies is being investigated for something criminal. You know, and he shouldn't have access. If that's the case, he obviously should not have access to wiretap transcripts. And the Justice Department has not denied the possibility that there is some kind of ongoing investigation that may have encompassed Trump or his campaign aides. We just don't know. So either he's nuts or there is something fairly bad going on, which he should be worried about, but it has nothing to do with, political vengeance from Obama. The other thing that always just drives me nuts when I hear this stuff about the deep state and purges is, there is no deep state. There are public servants, many of whom have worked hard their entire lives on behalf of the United States of America. And it really makes me angry when people start talking about them as if they're somehow the enemy. That we have a government for a reason. Our government does things for us, like make sure we have a military, make sure we're safe, make sure that we have education and hospitals and highways. And I really wish that the president would stop acting like we can get rid of it and it's all evil.
Yeah, and you know what, Malcolm, as somebody who I guess we could say is a former member of the deep state, you and Jack Rice, we have to interrogate y'all before you leave the studios today. But I mean, right, but I mean, that is the thing, is that you now have not just regular conspiracy theorists who are reading Breitbart.com or watching InfoWars saying that there is this deep state government conspiracy to take down the President of the United States. You have the President of the United States actually actively working to undermine trust in government from within. That sounds strong. I mean, we're going to talk about this in the B block, but have you ever heard of a president doing that before?
No, it's never been done. We have a conspiracy theory president. And I'm not even sure whether you can put those three words together in a tangible sentence and actually use the word president. He seems to be buying every crazy idea that's out there. Now, granted, the man can't seem to tell the truth about anything. And the worst part is, like Jennifer Rubin, she wrote an article, I guess, a few weeks ago, questioning whether he could actually determine what was real and what was false in his world. This is dangerous. And as much as it sounds amusing, we can make jokes about it, he controls 4,000 atomic weapons. He controls the levers of power in the United States. if he's going out with Steve King and other in Congress and saying that the former president of the United States wiretapped a conversation he had a few weeks ago with the president of Australia, I mean, we have got a very serious problem here. This man may be in a position where he will start causing true harm to American democracy because he doesn't know the difference between what American democracy is and the crazy things which he's told by people like Steve Bannon and other parts of the, alt-right world.
Well, and Joel, I think actually that is a very important point to make, because you do have a president who is surrounded by sort of an alt state, and that is this group of Bannonites, I don't know what you call them, sort of, they want this sort of Christian white nationalist ethno-state, I guess. And so people like Steve Bannon, people like Sebastian Gorka, people like Michael Anton, names people don't know, Stephen Miller. There is a core of people around Donald Trump who want him to keep believing conspiracy theories, who want him to essentially believe that President Obama can wiretap him from Hawaii or wherever President Obama happens to be. They want him to believe conspiracy theories. They come from Breitbart.com themselves.
Absolutely, and I think the challenge for every president and being successful is having people around you who will tell you the hard truths, not feed you the things that they want you to hear or that they think you want to hear every day. That's the key, because you're ultimately, as George W. Bush said, he's the decider. And to have a president who can't distinguish between what's real, what's fact, and what isn't is very dangerous, particularly in the times we're living in. And I think these are the things that are going to cause the biggest problems for Donald Trump going forward. He's got to understand, which he doesn't seem to right now, what this job is all about, what it requires to do it well and intelligently. And if he keeps thinking it's about having rallies and running a campaign, it's great to drive your message, but you're now the leader of the freed world, and he hasn't acted like that day in and day out since being inaugurated.
Just for a moment, are you worried that there's no one around him like that to counterbalance the Bannonite wing? There's nobody who knows enough about government, who is strong enough. Reince Priebus doesn't certainly seem strong enough. Who is there to be the Jim Baker and balance out the madness that's being fed to this obviously conspiracy-minded
I think that's
president?
a void. Or people like Karen Hughes, who were there for George W. Bush when he was president, or David Axelrod, or David Plouffe, or Rahm Emanuel, people who would stand up to the president and say to him, no, sir, this is not the right course. It's ultimately the president's decision. Here's the reality. Here's the set of facts you have to base your decision on. Ultimately, the president has to decide, but they're not even considering what the facts are each day. He goes out and shoots from the hip. That's the most dangerous thing to have in a president of the United States.
And Jack Rice, you just had members of Congress go to Langley to go to see the CIA for themselves, to go and talk to members of the CIA. What might they, will the CIA give members of Congress the real raw truth, or are they concerned that that might end up leaking? Is there a quote-unquote sort of background part of the intelligence community that might actually be afraid to fully brief Congress or the president because they don't know whether it'll end up on, the front page of Breitbart.com or the Washington Post?
Well, I think they need to be concerned, but I think what's most important here from an intelligence community perspective is that they just have to lay out what's really going on. The problem is it's being twisted and tweaked and torqued around at the White House. What we need to be able to establish is this is the truth. This is what we see. This is what is objectively going on out there, and you have to put it out. If you're going to be a pro, you got to be a pro. This is the case whether you're in the intelligence community or whether or not you're a journalist. You're finding that the White House is attacking both, and as a result, the only true response is to be the most professional that you can be, to establish what's happening and then let it lay out as it's going to. It's the only way to approach something like this.